Around the NFL podcast. Is mentally still on a beach in Mexico.
It's true. From the Chris Wesseling podcast studio, it's Around the NFL. I'm the guy still in Mexico, Dan Hanzus. Here are some heroes: Marc Sessler, Gregg Rosenthal, and I was just made aware that even though I was on vacation, the world went on.
Right. I mean, I wasn't in Mexico. Ooh, excuse me. I'm not ready for this. I've only been to Mexico a few times, and I drove across the border those times.
Badass boys drive badass toys.
Actually, I also went into Mexico. In that voyage, I went from Colorado to, in theory, LA. We got stuck in Arizona, but we dipped into Tijuana for a bit, and some unspeakable things occurred.
Now, we've been told, last time I mentioned Colorado, not to bring up Colorado anymore.
Really?
Or is that Arizona?
I think that was Arizona.
It was Arizona. I was thinking
Camp
another.
Happiness was in Colorado, so he's happy to talk
No,
about that.
you're incorrect about that, Gregg.
Oh.
Gregg has a factual history based on no facts.
Camp Happiness was a place of Marc's adolescence and
Camp Jewel is
into
what
young
I like to
man.
call
Now,
it.
see, that Gregg actually asked a question about it during our. Gregg and I spent almost the whole weekend together. I'll tell you that much.
Really?
So, yeah.
We did a
How'd
lot
that
of
go?
good, quality time.
Yep.
We were down at the Wolf Mansion, and then we saw you at Keisha's on Sunday night. So it was a nice,
Very nice.
around
Beautiful
the
time.
NFL weekend.
And I'd like to say that I missed you guys. I did miss you guys while I was on vacation, but
I mean, to some degree.
when you guys are digging into, is the AFC East's fourth place schedule actually harder than the NFC North's first place schedule while I'm toes in the sand sipping on mezcal down in Mexico? I didn't miss some things of what I missed. Put it that way.
I feel like you stumbled into that, but now it's going to become an every year thing. Like Dan missed schedule release week, and now suddenly that's going to become his thing. What? No one else can leave schedule release week.
I
That's
don't-
Dan. That's
I
Dan's
don't like
thing.
that trend.
No,
You know what? It was okay. It's
an easy show.
Fans love it. We got Rachel Burnett. You're dismissing the great guests we had on that because obviously it's
I'm
a
not
big
sure if
show
I'm
here.
dismissing
Rachel Bonetta
great
and
guests.
Claybon came on and Colleen was great.
We had a ball.
You had Rach on the show.
We had a ball. It was a robust enterprise.
And Rachel was on the show, and I know there was that controversy.
She declared vengeance on you.
And I imagine my co-host on the show came to my defense on the
Right.
program.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
But sure.
I was somewhat confused by it. I was saying, we're here right now. What more inner circle do you want? This is the show.
Right.
That was all I said about it.
I think it's assumed we would defend you. We don't need to say anything.
She was a little offended
I like
that
that.
you weren't here.
Yeah, she thought that was somehow
I like that.
part of it. Yeah.
Okay, good. Well, like Rachel, you had Claybon involved, Connie Fox, of course. That's great. We got a nice show today. We got another show coming up later in the week. We got a nice guest coming up later. Marc, you are heading out yonder. Won't even ask where you're going. But
Won't tell you.
This is your last show of the week, so let's
Yeah.
make it count. And coming up a little bit later, there are certain presumed truths of the NFL Cognoscenti. This time of year, post-free agency, post-draft. And I say we debunk some of those presumed truths because sometimes the Cognoscenti is actually the CONnoscenti. Nailed it.
That's usually where a Dan sound drop comes in. I thought there was a special
Sometimes it just had to sit.
Cognoscenti.
Sometimes you just let that one
Dan
sit.
Hanzus shout out.
Thank you, Paul Rudd. But first, let's do some news.
Zach looks good. He's definitely hit the weight room. Looks beefy. In a good way. In a good way.
Well, you can tell Dan is back.
He's wearing a Zach Wilson is good shirt. Maybe that's number one on your Cognoscenti list, that Zach Wilson is good. Because I don't think the Cognoscenti is on that yet.
No, but I will say this about Zachy. He was a little boy last year in every way, physically. That's a trope all the way, obviously. Off season, guy beefs up. But he really needed to beef up. and I hope that's true. And he does look like a little thick boy now.
He looks slight. He looks like a thick boy. I think it's time for him maybe to grow a
Why
big
is everyone
beard or
saying
something.
thick boy?
Well, because
THICK.
He still looks like a child.
So are we going to the THICC?
Yeah,
BOI?
that's the only no THICC.
BOI.
BOI.
I'm in love.
Yeah.
If he turns into a thick boy,
I feel like if Zach Wilson
11
were on any other
and 6?
team, you would be shredding him. But because he's on the Jets, somehow the way he presents himself is getting praised. But
it's good to be back. Let's get into it. Yeah, let's talk about your quarterback, Marky.
I don't have a quarterback.
Sorry, your almost quarterback. Sports Illustrated's Bert Breer, believes the NFL is likely, quote, wrapping things up, close quote, in the DeShaun Watson investigation. NFL reporter Josina Anderson reported that league officials are meeting with Watson this week in Texas after a lengthy investigation into more than 20 allegations of sexual assault against the former Texans quarterback, signed to a massive guaranteed deal by the Browns after a trade in March. Breer says that the NFL investigators usually talk to the player last. So here we are. Here we are with this stage, and it makes sense. At a certain point, everyone needs to know what the situation is with DeShaun Watson. You really did get me thinking, Gregg, a couple weeks ago when we were talking about this. I was thinking, he'll probably get dinged hard here. But now, I don't know, the more I think about it, and it's like, is this going to be a slap on the wrist relatively? And what's that going to mean? And what's that story going to be in the league? How do you feel about this? And this does seem like it's coming down now, finally.
Yeah, I don't have any predictions or any feel of how this is going to go. And NFL discipline has been very hard to predict over the last 10 years, just in general. But I just thought this story is certainly noteworthy that it is likely wrapping up, and it is time for it to wrap up. The civil lawsuits are not going to be wrapping up according to the timeline that we've seen. Like, if there's going to be a trial, they're still going through all these processes. It could last through the year. It could last into next year. So the NFL, by medium, seems to be indicating they are not on that timeline. Pro Football Talk put out different possibilities. One could be a suspension and maybe there'll be more later, or not a suspension and maybe there'll be more later. But either way, this is the biggest X factor of the 2022 season. It's like, yeah, it's uncomfortable to talk about. I don't think there's a ton of analysis, but it's absolutely the most important piece of information that we don't know about this upcoming season. We have no idea what Watson's availability is going to be like, and I would think that has to be coming to a head soon.
Yeah, I mean, the reason I think everyone's saying it's coming soon is because this is how these investigations play out. They do all their work, and they go to the subject, typically, of the investigation as the final note in the case, and then we will probably at some point, and who knows, this could be a little bit down the road, but it feels like a nice summertime Friday news dump when they drop their result on this. And the other thing I noticed about this is that DeShaun Watson right now has flown 30 members of the Browns offense to the Bahamas. And that's fine. You know what that tells me is that the players don't care at all about any of this. It's just like they're teammates now, and they're signing up for this.
Sure.
I mean, not that I expected them to, but it's like when you go into the actual
what are you
locker
gonna
room,
do? Yeah, what are you gonna do at that point?
I know. I guess so. And like I see more and more of the fan base drifting back to the team if there were issues as well. So
it tells me that
it's very
guaranteed
predictable.
money, that first signing bonus hit. Not that he was doing poorly
right.
before.
Or does he go to the Bahamas and never return with the guaranteed money? That's another option.
I mean, do the Browns say, hey, let's lay low on some type of extravagant Bahamas trip when this is still pending right now? I mean,
they don't seem to care, do they?
There are elements of the story, like the headline on ESPN.com, really, just like this bottomless sinkhole of filth. Sources, DeShaun Watson to meet with NFL, also will bring Cleveland Browns offensive teammates to Bahamas to bond. Just the story is just still so sloppy and messy and unfortunate, obviously, as well. And it's funny, like I tweeted about that headline, and I thought it was kind of notable in my replies that there are a lot of Browns fans like you, Marc, that were turned off by the organization and have turned their back on them. There are a lot of Browns fans that I'm sure don't feel good about this at all and are kind of laying low because what do you say? But then there's the vocal, whether it's a minority or the majority, of the other type of Browns fans. They're like, whatever, shut up, you baby. I'm happy. My quarterback's here. We got a QB1 now. And that again, there's so many levels to the story. Browns fans are such a great fan base and a franchise that everyone was kind of intrinsically rooting for, that now those type of boneheads, those bozos, are like the mouthpiece of the organization on social media. It just got, Mark, we talked about this privately too. There's just so many layers to the story that are disappointing, and what it means to the Browns as an organization, both in the short and the long term. We're just beginning to see it.
Yeah, and it's funny because as we were walking in here, NFL Network was replaying the pretty crazy Browns-Chargers game from last season where, the Browns put up a ton of points and barely lost to another great offense in Los Angeles. And, man, that feels like a long time ago.
It was kind of the last great Baker Mayfield moment, because we
Yeah.
certainly didn't leave that game being like, Baker's a problem.
He was sensational through large parts of the game, but he did not. He had a chance to win it, and he couldn't. And I think that's part of the DNA of why he's not with the team right now. I do think it's interesting that Ian Rappaport on Pat McAfee, even this week, and he said this twice now, and I don't understand how this could ever happen, that it makes sense. He's not saying this would happen, but it would make sense at some point for Baker Mayfield and the Browns, if DeShaun Watson is suspended for a long time, to just basically put it behind them, come play, get his money, and maybe get traded mid-season if he plays well.
It makes logical sense that he would be an upgrade over the guy that's in the house, and he's already under contract, and he doesn't have any value. All that makes sense. I guess that's probably where Ian's coming from on that. But obviously, it's a poisoned relationship on so many levels.
Right.
Jake Briskett's starting those games if Watson is out.
Let's now talk some contract news, and let's do it with a little time for news and notes and contract heat. Presented by Upwork, where you can build the team that will build your business. Learn more at Upwork.com. The Packers couldn't find a way to make it work with Davante Adams, but they do with Jaire Alexander, the cornerback. He signs a 4-year, $84 million contract extension that includes $31 million in 2022 and a cornerback record $30 million signing bonus. You may remember when Jalen Ramsey got the bag a year or two ago, and that was $20 million in annual pay. So cornerbacks, Mark, not the hottest market earlier in free agency, but we're seeing this now with some deals with some in-house superstars, Denzel Ward and other, getting paid by the teams that know how important they are to their defense.
Yeah, and the beat writers covering the Packers, they were on this, months ago. They knew this was happening. This is something Green Bay wanted to do. I know that, Alexander missed all but 4 games of the regular season, came back to play in the playoffs, which actually earned him a ton of street cred with the coaches, with his teammates. Aaron Rodgers called him one of the most interesting players he's ever been around. So he's beloved in the locker room. The team loves him. And if you look at this secondary, because I know we've talked about the Saints, we've talked about the Ravens as, top 1-2 secondaries in the league right now. This Packers team is there because you've got Eric Stokes, Darnell Savage, Adrian Amos, Rasul Douglas, who blew up last year. There's a lot to like here, and you may get to the point where this would be a weird sight. The defense might finally and slowly have a small edge over the offense on this team. I think this was a top 8 coverage unit a year ago, and I think they could be better if Alexander plays the whole year.
I think so. I think on paper they have one of the better defenses in the league. And the Alexander contract was interesting to me for the money purposes because the cornerbacks got to be seeing these wide receivers making all this money. And to me, Jaire Alexander is absolutely at the same level of an A.J. Brown, and he's not far off of a Davante Adams. Like, he should be potentially the highest paid cornerback in the league, and he is basically, but it's still way below the wide receiver numbers. I think it's Eric Eager does this war type value stat at PFF. He had Jaire Alexander as the most valuable cornerback in the league in 2020. So that's the type of player he is. Cornerbacks aren't making that sort of money yet. But the Packers showed like it wasn't about money with Davante Adams. You mentioned that. Like they could have gotten that done. They still have one of the most amount of cap space in the entire league, and yet they're spending a ton of cash. They're like in the top 5. So all those little fake, what is it? The stock The stock sales that they do, where they just like print cash and everyone gives them 100.
It's not fake. Those are all part owners of the Green Bay Packers.
Well, it must be helping because they're a small market and they're spending more cash than just about anyone. And this is a smart way to be spending your money. A player that is this good. He is one
Gregg,
of the best.
You're pretty plugged in on the salary cap stuff. And if you're telling me they still could have had a way to keep Davante Adams in the building, I don't buy into it. Listen, they lost.
But Ian actually, on that same appearance, I heard him talking about, they offered Davante Adams more cash in the first 2 years of his deal than the Raiders did.
Adams wanted to go to the
So
Raiders.
he just wanted out.
to go.
And it was like the highest receiver contract of all time. So what are you going to do?
Maybe it could have been handled a little more deftly in the earlier stages of his career with the team.
Maybe.
But whatever. Maybe it just wasn't meant to be. And it was not the defense that knocked him out of the playoffs last year. They gave up 2 field goals in the NFC divisional playoffs. There was a blocked punt, and then Aaron Rodgers in the offense with Davante Adams peed down their legs.
If you knew that, would you not have bet your house, Dan, that you own in? All right,
the bank owns it.
Well, okay, but I mean, would you
We'll
not?
have to bleep
if
out
you
the
knew
town
that, if
now
you knew that's
where
what they
I live,
were, they
yeah.
were going to give up that kind of defensive performance. There's no way they lose that game.
I was locking up my lock title. I locked up the pack. I said, this is in the bag.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
And I needed a late Rams touchdown to hold on to the trophy. That was a stunning lock defeat because, that didn't make any sense.
I'd keep his town location in there and let people just investigate if you're in the area or if you're not and you want to come to the area.
In other news, Jarvis Landry is now a member of the Saints. The Saints signed the former Brown and Dolphin wide receiver, so he now slots in nicely. Nailed it. Michael Thomas, Chris Olave, the rookie, Jarvis Landry, and I think the thing that really jumps out to a lot of people, Greggy, was the money. Rap Sheet reported that Landry's base salary is just $3 million. Tom Pelissero said it's worth up to $6 million. That's a great deal for a very good wide receiver.
Yeah, there clearly was very little market for Jarvis Landry. I don't think Odell Beckham will be the same. I'm curious if the Saints might try to keep this LSU thing going and bring in OBJ still after getting Honey Badger and Landry. But I'm really thinking this Saints team looks pretty good on paper. I mean, they won a lot of games last year with some pretty lousy quarterback play. Maybe Jameis isn't going to be much better coming off the torn ACL or not, but suddenly you go from Marquez Callaway being your number 1 receiver, and he did get over 800 yards, to Marquez Callaway being your number 4 receiver behind those 3 guys you mentioned. And that's a nice setup with a really good-looking defense.
Yeah, they handled their needs and their thin position groups as well as anyone. There's something about the Saints because this was in a year where suddenly you don't have maybe a home run at quarterback. Their attitude was, we're going for it. We're going back to the playoffs. We're going to knock Tom Brady and the Bucs out of one of those 2 regular season games, if not both, like last year. Jarvis Landry totally fits, and he's already tweeting at Odell Beckham, and I think that has real sway. The idea that, they were together in Cleveland, it went sour, to go to the Saints, their hometown, and to bring back Honey Badger. There's something about this New Orleans team that is spicy. As I look for a team to root for, maybe just in spirit for a year, they are in the top 3 for me at this point.
Wow, and they have a lot of cap space too. They cleared all that space for Watson and then didn't get him. So weirdly, they have a lot. And they're another team. I like teams that are just trying to win. Like, you don't always have to take a huge step back. They won, they had a winning record last year, and I think they should again.
If you are a Saints fan this year, they were a finalist for DeShaun Watson. Just going to say.
Right.
Well, you're right. I'm not trying to be some sort of school marm about the whole thing. The Browns thing, to me, that was if it was a cake, that is a big part of the cake. And there were other things in that whole Browns thing that I had soured on.
It is this weird thing because, we know Saints fans, and there was a lot that were rooting against Watson, but the second that you don't get him, it's like, well, it didn't matter. They went for him, but they didn't get him. He's not the guy you have to root for.
I see what Dan's saying,
you can throw it out the window.
Dan has a point, though, because
it is.
It makes you look like you're all over the map. So, yeah.
And it is a little bit of a Saints fan club in here, and I'm sorry that I'm not part of it. But I think everything they've done and the roster looks good. I think the division is certainly competitive. They have a chance to win that division, but questions of quarterback and head coach it's fair to ask how that's all going to work together in 2022. But other than that, the roster's pretty good. And
quarterback and head coach are not small things to have
pretty
question
big.
marks.
Yeah, looking good, except for the old quarterback and head coach.
All right, that was news and notes. presented by Upwork, the world's work marketplace. Learn more at Upwork.com. All right, Drew Brees is done. Yeah, speaking of saints and legends and maybe the quarterback in 2022, Drew Brees is out at NBC. By the way, big guest booking this week. Andrew Marchand, who's taken the sports media beat, and he's just like a dog with a bone. And if anybody even comes near the bone, he flashes those teeth, and the people run away. The other dogs run away.
It's notable that it's almost all NFL bones. It's not the other. No one seems to care about who's announcing the baseball game of the week or the NBA playoffs for the most part.
I think
Am I wrong?
he does that stuff, though. He does.
No,
that
he does.
stuff.
But I mean, does it get on any of you guys? Follow all this? Does it get on your radar?
We'll talk about it with Andrew, but
Yeah.
it's a perfect storm where he's definitely plugged in, and this just happens to be this revolution in that industry of announcers being paid like star quarterbacks now.
Right,
It's just
right.
like
And a
it's
wild
his
off
beat.
season. Yeah.
So it's his beat. What is this drop?
It feels like a sort of a revolutionary
a
war
missive.
scenario.
It's a missive
Yeah,
from
yeah.
Drew Brees.
Right.
Thank you. I had asked Gravedigger behind the scenes about 47 seconds ago on our IM client to have the missive music ready, and then he played it, and I didn't know what it was. So that little vacation fog there.
Right.
Mezcal.
I could have learned from you. One thing I missed out on when I was in the host chair was to check my computer. I forgot a complete segment with Connie on the show because I didn't check Graver's IMs once.
You should do that thing where you get in the host's ear
You could have done that.
and blow out
Could
his
have done
eardrum.
that, Yeah.
That's a good move.
I wasn't sure if Gregg was just like, well, we've been going for an hour, so I'll just skip.
Right.
this
You don't know.
segment.
It's unpredictable turf. I thought you did an excellent job those days and
No,
today.
it was not on you. It was on me.
All right, so
Well, that's a great point, Mark.
there you go, Mark.
Just fishing for that. That's all.
All right, Brees is 43 years old. He retired from football last March, spent last season as an NFL analyst for NBC. The musical chairs game that we're going to get into with Marchand left him without a seat, so he tweeted Sunday in response to the New York Post Andrew Marchand article. Look, Marchand is, well, I'll save it for tomorrow. I'll save it for this week. Here we go, later this week. Here we go. Here's what Brees had to say. Now the missive music. Because you kind of caught me off guard there, too.
He was just trying to push the show along.
Yeah, he was.
He was trying to get me to my meeting.
Despite speculation from media about my future this fall, I'm currently undecided. I may work for NBC. I may play football again. I may focus on business and philanthropy. This is always a tough one for me. Philanthropy. I may train for the pickleball tour, senior golf tour, coach my kids, or all of the above. I'll let you know. That laughter was my laughter in an editorial note. So, and then Dennis Allen, speaking of Dennis Allen, said of that cryptic tweet, it was likely made in jest about a potential return to football. We could save the analysis of his broadcasting career for later in the week, but do you guys think there's any way we see Brees again on the field?
No, because I think the Saints don't sound interested on any level. I think that what we saw of Drew Brees was the right time for him to leave the field. The only thing I'll say about broadcasting real quick, as I won't be here for that one, is that tweet is a point-blank explanation of why Drew Brees is not going to be with NBC anymore. He is not funny. He is not interesting. I don't find that quote in any way entertaining.
Right. I don't think he was. Also, the tweet before it was about signing Landry and Honey Badger, and he said, makes me want to come back and play again. I mean, this doesn't seem that subtle, but I'm with Mark. I don't think there's much of a chance that he will play because the Saints are the only team that you could imagine him playing with, and they seem to be putting out the word through the reporters and even Allen's comments that they're just not that interested. The fact that he started it with I may work for NBC after the report was that they are moving on was a tough scene. It felt like it reminded me of that, that drill tweet where it gets retweeted a lot. It's about a decade old, where it's like, I'm not owned. I continue to insist as I slowly shrink and transform into a corn cob. Just like that. That's the meme. That the Drew Brees. He's like, I'm not owned. I was not fired. Like, yeah,
tough. It was a bad year, but you also, there's something to said about developing your talent, and he didn't get much run. I guess he just got a bad vibe.
Can I make one little note about the
Yes.
the missive music?
Yes.
Could you just play it for a second? Because I just want you to think about this. This is like, I'm not saying this was recorded during the Revolutionary War. It's obviously a new band has come and done this, but in real wartime scenarios,
Yes.
there were boys like that tasked with wearing like the tight clothing and playing on a flute while everyone else has a
Take
gun.
a cannonball to the
Right,
gut.
it's like
Yeah.
like you're walking around with a musical instrument on a war field. It sounds like one of the worst possible tasks, a job.
Now,
you
what
could
is
have.
it about the tight clothing on
What
the
up,
small
I'm
boys
just saying-
that really stands out in
No,
your
that's
mind?
not maybe what's standing out so much. They were all in that clothing, but it's like you're in your war
Right, it's like
regalia, and
everyone
like,
else is getting a musket,
Right.
and like a hand revolver and a club or whatever, and then you're like, here's a flute.
yeah, here's
Get to the front of
and
the
by
line.
the way, we're also here for our enemies' entertainment. Let us play music for them as well. It just feels slightly off key.
I wonder. I would definitely watch a Netflix documentary on that. Not that any of the participants are with us to tell us how it really worked, but you would imagine they would take the physically weaker soldiers. Maybe the more musically inclined, but not most
The
athletically
artists.
gifted. The artists.
Yeah, maybe the offshoot of the NFL painter here that
right.
you
NFL
always
painter
talk about.
that has
Yeah.
to finish it in 2 hours or less.
Potentially us.
He's coming back for that Odell on the Saints painting soon.
Yeah, no, that's absolutely fair, Mark. Let's ponder that. Let's take a break and ponder it. We'll be right back to finish the news, and then we'll get to our seg. All right, let's spin through the rest of the news real quickly here because we got to get things done here. All right. Melvin Ingram, edge. I think he was on he was a graybeard too. So he comes out of graybeard purgatory to sign with the Dolphins, formerly of the Chiefs. You like that move, Greggy?
I do. I think he could wind up starting for them. Their top three. I'm banging through the projected starter series. The NFC is going out this week, AFC next week. I believe they have Andrew Van Ginkel and Jalen Phillips, who actually that's a good young duo, but Ingram comes in there. Those three probably share the snaps. It's a good-looking roster on paper, this Dolphins team, and I think that was one of their biggest weaknesses, so that was a nice move.
All right. Oh, you got something else there?
No, I was pointing to you that you can. You said
good.
we have business to do. You can keep going. I thought Gregg
Right.
did a great job with that.
But now, because we had that miscommunication, it's filling in the void. What would have been a take for
Right.
you that would have
Well, we need to do another
necessarily.
1,400 shows to get that kind of thing ironed out.
Jerry Jeudy, legal trouble. Colorado sheriff has announced that Jerry Judy's arrest this week or last week is on second-degree criminal tampering with a domestic violence enhancer. The sheriff's department in Arapahoe County, Colorado.
Arapahoe.
Thank you.
Arapahoe.
Listen, he's a native.
I actually lived on Arapahoe Road for a bit, so.
There was no act of violence before Judy's arrest on the charges, and he will be released on bond or has been released on bond. So some criminal issues for Jerry Jeudy. We'll see how those charges play out. Falcons acquire wide receiver Clyde Edwards and a 2023 7th-round pick from the Raiders in exchange for a 2023 5th-round pick. This has got you hot in the pants, Greggy.
It really doesn't. But they had another move. I mean,
Some Revolutionary
Edwards,
War pants.
It's as like thin a receiver position.
Give Greg a flute.
as
Get
they
him to the
have.
front. Let's be done with this.
It was as thin a position as they have, so Edwards could potentially start. But they also made a signing this week that caught my eye. Nick Kwiatkowski.
Kwiatkowski.
Who I always will remember as that Wes was a big fan of his in his last year in Chicago, and then the Raiders signed him. He kind of fell off the map when he went with the Raiders. But that was only interesting because it really looks like Deion Jones is not going to be back with the Falcons, something I didn't realize until I was doing this projected starter series, that even their team website basically indicated that they expect him to be traded or released, that there's three different options of what they're going to do with Deion Jones. And option 3 was, well, he could stay here. So it sounded like a guy who I was writing about at halftime of the Super Bowl as the key piece of a defense that was shutting down the Patriots and was certainly a core player for that Falcons team for a while and made a lot of money and is still young, only 27, will probably not be a member of the Falcons by the time we get to the season. I don't know if they'll be able to get a late round pick or what they'll get for him, but he's a good young player.
That is a rough roster. Maybe
And
the
you
worst
really
in the
did.
league.
You had something there, Greggy.
I mean, you don't think that was show worthy? I
No,
mean,
it
Deion Jones
was
is a real player.
Hey, listen,
Yeah.
you were passionate about it. The Falcons don't always get the most coverage. I'm very, I'm on board with it. You had written in your potential news rundown that you sent next to Brian Edwards and Nick Kukowski, I have a connected take.
In all caps.
In all caps. So we're like, we better get that in the show.
Well, here's why. Because every once in a while, you'll see a pretty low-level news item. And
I have a connected take.
I don't blame you, but you just take it out of the show because it's like we go too long. And you see Kwiatkowski, and you're thinking, why are we talking Kwiatkowski? And I was just like, let's get this in there for the Deion Jones thing. They signed Rashaan Evans, by the way, too. So they have 2 guys. They also drafted someone
All
there,
right,
so it
now-
doesn't make
It's a
sense.
savvy
Now we're
broadcasting move by Gregg.
Gravedigger. Where's your drop, by the way? That doesn't go away because I went on vacation. Put it in the list of potential segment ideas.
Mm-hmm.
I have a connected take.
Okay.
I feel like there's
that's
something
good.
there.
For a
I
second,
like
I
that.
thought you were going to make fun of me and say, like, we're going to do Deion Jones landing spots or something later in the week.
No, we were letting you have that. You were passionate. And finally, in the news, Matt Rule, yes, I'm going to say it. No, not moribund Panthers coach, the embattled Matt Rule. It's his turn. He's got, we always like, who's going to be the next coach who has to eat for 4 straight months and then get fired, or 8 straight months. Last year, of course, it was Matt Nagy. The year before, it was Adam Gase. And Matty Rule, you get the crown. Earlier last week, a report came out that Panthers owner David Tepper is interested in potentially hiring former Saints head coach Sean Payton next season after Payton tests his interest in doing television. And Joe Person, who's covered the Panthers there forever, on the Panthers eyeing Sean Payton report, Matt Rule said Dave Tepper called him to tell him the story was coming out, and there was nothing to it. And yet, Mark, that doesn't feel true.
It does not feel true at all. Number one, the statement that the Panthers issued reads as such: "We would not talk to or consider a coach."
Wait, where's the missive music?
Back to the missive. And for an embattled coach, that makes sense.
Greggy, take the flute.
We would not talk to or consider a coach who's under contract with another team. Now, hold on. It doesn't even mention, by the way, we love Matt Rule. Like, we believe in Matt Rule. It's like, we just wouldn't do that. It's like, you already, and by the way, are the Saints in any scenario who own the rights of Sean Payton going to ever trade Sean Payton, A, at all? Probably not. But B, inside their own division to the Panthers? Are you nuts?
I thought this report had validity to it that was only emboldened by that phone call to Joseph Person that you mentioned
Yes.
and by the statement. I mean, that it's like you're protesting too much. It also was a random but reputable source, like out of nowhere. And when reports happen like that with someone that's credible but like doesn't usually break NFL news, like, this guy knows. Like, he has some inside information, and it totally makes sense to me. And I take offense that you say I'm the flute guy.
Well,
Like, hey,
Well,
number
I was
one,
reading the statement, so-
I'm not artistic at all. I'm terrible at music, and I'm sneaky athletic. So put me up on the front lines. I'll get
Greg,
stuff done.
we'll give you a
you were-
musket.
I'm not gonna be
We'll give
playing
you a
that.
dagger.
Greg, you were a vocalist in a goth band.
It's fair. It was not a goth.
Well, I
band.
mean, that you've given us no other proof that it wasn't.
I mean,
so.
we're not going to put you with all the
I can't play
barbarians
on
we have in
music.
like the back row. You got to have I think you would make sense as like the fast like guy doing like ninja moves up front. If we're gonna if you insist,
I'm
you don't
agile,
just get a
I
flute.
have endurance.
Yeah, but
I don't
the
need to even state my credentials,
Yeah,
but I'm
that's
also
actually-
terrible at music, too.
But that's actually probably beneficial for the flute players in that realm to be athletic
true.
and
But it's
nimble.
inside you. You know
That's
why
true.
it's inside you? Your brother is an accomplished guitar player.
Right.
He's
So
a
it's-
composer, but it's not inside me. I tried.
He's a
I tried.
composer, for Christ's sake.
Yeah. And a guitar.
It's
good
in
guitar.
you. It's in you somewhere. And by the way, I have I have a little sound from the future. Do you want to hear it? Please?
Yes.
All right. This is from January of the future. Oh, that's Matt Rule running out of the team facility after being fired. That's going to the airport. Oh, he just landed at Austin International. He's renting a car. Oh, and he's signing a huge contract with a Big 12 team where he'll be the head coach and be happy again.
One thing, remember, the Panthers signed him to like a 7-year deal that annoyed everyone. he could be paid to do nothing for like the next 4 years.
It annoys David Tepper. I don't know about anybody else.
I also noticed that Sean Payton in his TV deal that we've heard like has been percolating for a while is going to be with Fox, and he's just filling in on days that Jimmy Johnson isn't there. So it's not like this is clearly sort of a hit it and quit it scenario for him in the media. He seems very much angling already to be getting back into coaching in 2023.
Yep, look out,
Sean
Mike
Payton
McCarthy.
shrewd.
Right.
Yeah.
It's like, how many days does Jimmy Johnson miss? That's a whole job? Maybe it is. Maybe it's like 7 days, but it can't be like that many days.
It's like, Sean,
he's
are you
getting
going
up
to come to the production meeting? I don't care.
That's how we talked.
That's Damashek's impression of Wes.
I don't care.
All right, that's what's happening in the news. All right, now it's time to debunk some presumed truths of the football Cognoscenti. Ellipsis. Or should I say CONnoscenti? I'm going to start with one that's very unpopular. And again, this is not necessarily my feelings personally that I'm dooming a team that they have no chance or, whatever this is going to be. It doesn't mean this is how I feel. It's just more about like, let's tone down the rhetoric. Let's tone down. Groupthink is a crazy thing in the NFL and on Twitter. And everybody seems to get hyped up about the same teams. And I want to bring the temperature down a little bit in Detroit. Let's start there.
Yeah.
The presumed truth is the Lions will be good. Just going to bring that down. I think they're much closer to the Bears than they are to the Packers. And for what it's worth, Vegas agrees. DraftKings has their over-under at 6.5 wins.
But wouldn't that indicate it's not a presumed truth at all? That's sort of the best indication.
But DraftKings is separate than the football Cognoscenti.
You hear it bubbling up.
Gotcha.
I'm with you. It's especially of late.
And it's funny, before with Gregg's help, of course, because he had to send me the link where to find this information, I went through their schedule, and I did it with a generous eye. And I saw, and they're going to be on Hard Knocks, and that's great. I can't wait. I see 7-10, which is a big jump forward for the team.
It's an over. Let's bet the over.
So I would bang the over. But if you look at a schedule of team and you see whatever the record is, you can make the case for 2 extra wins, which would make them 9-8 and probably a playoff team. But you also can go the other way, and you can say, well, they can go 5-12 too. I think that's within the realm. The bottom line for me is they're probably a year away at least, and we shouldn't rush to make them a thing. You've seen a little bit of that with the Jets right now too in the AFC. There's no need to rush. They can improve without being the next Bengals, and I think that's a best case scenario. And I have some reasons why, but I just want to throw it to you guys and get your initial feelings on that.
I'm with you. I think that we're conflating the idea that the Lions are finally not like ragingly dull. There's interest around them. The way they finished last season, I think, has a lot to do with the way people think they might just pick up where they left off. They have their wide receiver room compared to where they were a year ago at this time is juicy. They've got parts on offense. I think they're good on both lines. There's a lot to like about the way they're building the team, and they're competent finally. But the idea that they're going to hopscotch the Bears, I can buy that because the Bears are in a rebuild. The Vikings and the Packers, no. And so are you going to be the third team in that division to make a wild card or go win 9 games and then balance out with the rest of the NFC? I think they're a year away, but I do think there's a reason for optimism finally.
Right. I think the excitement's just about the process, though. I think when we get to August and we see that list of like the 30 NFL.com analysts, there'll be about 2 that actually pick them to the playoffs. So now we're pushing back against the excitement, and I am excited, but to me it's more about the build, and I think people like to get on for the ride. So to your point, you're right. Everyone's excited because it's like, wow, they're making smart decisions. Their coaches seem like they get it. Their front office seems like they get it. Their team's coming together, and yet I think most of the people even saying that, including me, are totally on board with everything the 2 of you guys just said, that it's coming up. If things broke really well for them, maybe this year, like you said, could be interesting. You get a winning record, but it's more like we're getting in on the ground floor. This is going to be fun. It's like the process in Philadelphia. People love to get into the rebuilds, and this is actually a rebuild that looks like it's in a steady year 2 climb.
You know what's happening? Because here's to your point, Dan. Like, you're going to start to see this with certain people out there that it's May. You want to make an impact as an analyst. I could go on a long 2-minute speech talking about how I'm on the Lions bandwagon right now. They're going to make the playoffs.
You've done it in the past, actually.
Well, I did 2 years ago, and I couldn't have been more wrong. It's not even because of that I'm not going to do it, but it's like there's a lot of that packaging, the idea that you're the Lions person. It goes out on Twitter. A bunch of people start to rally around you, and it's a product for the analyst more than reality.
And it would be shame on me if I'm pushing back against the excitement, because look at my fan allegiance. That's what I have right now. The idea that you're building something, the quote
Jets
unquote,
are a hot team right now.
Yeah, quote unquote, the right way and all that. But it's not that. I think there is a contingent within the inner circle of the Cognoscenti that is seeing this as maybe more like they could shock people this year.
Right. I don't even want to have takes right now because I realize I usually like change my takes between May and August. And by August, I probably start like reacting to the other takes that are out there. So I'm just going to like withhold my takes.
That's good. I think that's smart. I think for them to get to that,
I don't even know what they are.
Get to that 9-8. Goff has to stay healthy and be pretty good.
Right. I think 9-8 is doable though because I think they could be an average
let me say,
team.
Goff has to play well. Jameson Williams has to make an impact. You need this offensive line to hold up, which I think it will. It looks good. The running back room is exciting, but you need health in that realm. Aiden Hutchinson should make an immediate impact, but you kind of need him to. Jeff Okudah's back, but is he going to be a guy that lives up to his draft stock? There's a lot of things that have to go right.
The back seven on defense, their linebackers and then their secondary is certainly the weakest part of their team. And I think they coached them up well last year. But they're a year away, too, in addition to Goff. Hutchinson, though, is joining a really exciting front group. Like, I think that is a pass rush that goes 6, 7, 8 deep, and that's a nice strength.
And we do love Dan Campbell. Everybody loves Dan Campbell, and he was the perfect kind of face of that team during that season. I would like to see him and the coaching staff with a better roster. Do they play the guitar?
Yeah, the last thing they need...
Like Eric Rosenthal.
Eric, I mean, how dare you, Dean Rosenthal?
Damn it.
What's his middle name?
Stewart.
Okay, so you didn't even get the middle
I will
name.
never forget that again. I'm sorry. And I did know.
There was a part in like high school going into college where he either was considering or actually did go by the name Dean Stewart.
Well, that sounds like a
sounds like something, but I felt like it's a little like you're throwing off the Jewy Rosenthal of it all.
Well,
I wasn't
Hollywood
a fan
probably
of
is what
and
he's doing.
entertainment is rich with that move, so it's not like
so he went Dean Stewart for a little while, but I don't think he felt bad about it. He went back,
All right, what do you got, Mark?
Okay, this probably won't be very popular in this room. I just feel that the wrong-Noscenti or non-Noscenti have CONnoscenti have crowned the Buffalo Bills a little early in a very rich and deep AFC. And do I think that they're a playoff team? Absolutely. Are they probably going to win their division? Absolutely. Are they? We'll see the way they do from there. They lost 6 games a year ago, going 5-1 against a putrid AFC East. I think the Dolphins are a different team. They're going to be tougher to defend than ever before during all of this business. I think the Jets are the kind of team that can split with the Bills. The Patriots can split. I really do think that if the Jets, unless the Jets are
spicy.
A hot
this is
mess,
what it's for.
Beefy, thick boy.
But if the Jets can't beat the Bills and they can't beat the Dolphins, then why are we talking about the Jets so much? There's got to be a step at some point.
Show.
Well, that's fair. But I would just say you went 5-1 in your division last year and still lost 6 games. They open with the Rams, the Titans, the Dolphins, who they're going to have to see them early before they have a lot of tape on what they're doing, the Ravens, the Steelers, the Chiefs, and the Packers. The schedule opens up from there, but they don't have the easiest of slates. And I would just say over the last 2 years, they have done an awesome job building up the team. They did an awesome job growing Josh Allen. Brian Dable had a lot to do with that. You have to project and hope that Ken Dorsey, who has been there for a while, it's a seamless transition. I think it's a good guy to take over, but he's never done what Brian Dable's done before in the same capacity. There is difference right there. That does take away the quarterback relationship. And everything went right, health-wise, mostly for the Bills over the last 2 seasons. It wasn't a team that had to deal with a ton of adversity. Does that happen 3 years in a row to NFL teams? Typically not. I'm just saying I'm not projecting them in the AFC title game without putting any mental thought to the fact that the AFC is a thorny mess right now.
That's where your argument, to me, lands, that there could be 8 teams that you could see being in the AFC Championship. And just assuming that the Bills, who I think on paper are the best team on paper and finished last season so strong, are just going to be right back there. We know that's just not how it always works, but just because of that doesn't make me really believe in them left. It's more just the AFC. You're right. Some of those teams that aren't the Bills, essentially, or the Chiefs, are going to step up and probably be a superpower too. I just think they'll be with the Bills. I think the Bills will be alongside whoever those other teams are.
And even before Brian Daboll left town, we were talking for weeks on this show during the regular season last year about what happened to the Bills' offense. It's not impossible if they could have a similar or even worse issues as they kind of start this new era. I will point out, because Buffalo fans are probably yelling at their player right now, they did lose Tre'Davious White to a torn ACL last December, which was a crushing loss for that defense. The year before, I think they were far more healthy, but that was a huge loss. You get him back.
Right, not like nothing went wrong, but in general, it wasn't like what happened to the Ravens last year.
You were so big on the Bills 2 years ago, and now you're jumping off.
I like them. I think it's just that when everyone became a Bills fan suddenly, it was like...
Well, that's when
because they were ready to win the Super Bowl last year.
You know
and
Marc Sessler by now.
That's a fair point.
He likes to get in before... That's why late period Browns fandom for you was so difficult, I imagine. I wonder if that played a part in you jumping off. All of a sudden, there were Browns fans literally everywhere you look, and all of a sudden it wasn't so special to be a Browns fan anymore. Yay or nay?
Even in our building, there was a time when I was like the Browns fan. There are like 27 Browns fans inside NFL Network. It's just like, okay, I get it.
The thing with the Bills, though, why so many people, including myself, are so high is I just think they had a great offseason on top of that. Now, dealing with expectations is difficult, but this is a team that added Von Miller. And on top of that, Daquan Jones, Tim Settle, which I think were smart moves. They take a cornerback and you get White back in the first round and you get White back. The moves all made sense to me this offseason, that they took a great roster. They weren't satisfied, and it looks a little better even to me.
That's fair, flautist.
That's all.
Flautist. He's a flautist.
I tried to be a good musician. I could not live up to Dean.
This is your chance.
Dean's shadow.
Don't get me started on that.
Because how cool would it be to be a good musician?
It wasn't. It's one of my great regrets.
It wasn't in me. I tried.
I think Ricky played a sound drop on this message I left for Colleen. If you just learn that acoustic guitar, if I could just kind of learned Wonderwall, if I could just learn a couple of Pete Yorn songs in 2001, what would have happened?
Oh, you would have been on fire at party. Exactly. That room off the main room in a party. This guy's playing his little Wonderwall.
I was in Hoboken with my buddies.
Sure.
I was 24 years old. And we come back from Washington. And I got the axe. Then what happens?
I'll give you some lessons sometime.
It's too late. What does it do for me now?
He's always got to insert his swarthiness into the episode.
Gravedigger used that for the blonde paramour that is not to be spoken of on the show any longer.
Oh, no. He doesn't want that.
It's like, here's a song I wrote called Glycerine.
It's a romantic special. It really brings to the lady. Glycerine.
You wrote this?
I think, Dan, you would have married a Hoboken area bartenders.
I feel like
disappeared.
Lyrics were not what people were into with Bush. It was that dude was hot. I think that helped.
He was not a thick boy either. He was a lithe. He was a lithe boy. All right. Let's take a break and continue. All right, you're up, Gregg.
All right, I'm going to base mine on my mentions. And I'm just going to assume my mentions are somehow indicative of consensus.
Or matter.
Jalen Hurts is the biggest question when it comes to the Eagles out there to me. Mm-hmm. But what I'm pushing back against is the idea that Jalen Hurts needs to take this big step for the Eagles to be a really good team. To me, he doesn't. He's already there. He's better than people think. He definitely had his worst or second worst game of the year in the playoffs, and that's absolutely a concern. But he's also a second-year starter who, to me, certainly that happens. It happened to Josh Allen. Not saying he's going to be Josh Allen. He is close to being a league average starter or already a league average starter right now. And like my belief in the Eagles, and you mentioned the over-unders, for the Eagles, it's at 8.5, which seems crazy to me. To me, I think they can be, and this is one take, I don't mind getting there early. I'm not going to back off it. I think they can be a 10-11 win type of team because their team is really strong, and all they need is Jalen Hurts to basically repeat what he did a year ago, except now you're going to have a little more help with A.J. Brown, but keep that running game going with him as a huge part of it. Keep being efficient enough as a passer and getting the mismatches that a Lamar Jackson gets in the passing game, and he is going to be just fine. The rest of the team can help him out, and that they can be a contender with Jalen Hurts being the guy he was a year ago.
I think I have a little bit of a issue with the conceit on this one, because I think within the realm of the football Cognoscenti, it seems to me like Jalen Hurts is a popular figure. And it's fans, including Eagles fans, a lot of times it seems that somehow or sometimes seem to have doubts about his ability. I feel like the general vibe about, and maybe I'm wrong, Mark, you tell me what you think, is that Hurts is a young ascendant quarterback that's not as talented maybe as the top tier guys, but put him in the right offense and let him use his legs and his arm. He can be a guy that's a top 12 starter potentially. I feel like that's where most people are at him.
I think also that there's two different communities. There's the football fan, but then there's the fantasy community that are all over Jalen Hurts. They love him because I think his floor is so high.
Right, and I kind of think his floor as an NFL starting quarterback is similarly high. Like, to me, he's a tick above where Teddy or Tua were a year ago. And that team is strong. That's why I like the Eagles. It's not because of Jalen Hurts. And there is a chance here, because Jalen Hurts got so much better, I think, from college to his rookie year to second year, there is certainly a chance he could mature and continue to become a better passer and go up another level. And then you're really
Health
cooking
matters,
with
though,
grease
with him.
and gas. You're cooking with grease
and that's
and
actually
gas.
Sounds dangerous.
That sounds like a house exploding.
Right.
The Jalen Hurts health issue, because he's got to be a guy that moves around a lot. He had ankle surgery in the offseason.
Yep.
It kind of wiped out his ceiling throughout the end of the season in the playoffs. He does his style of play match up with what the big man upstairs gave him body-wise. Staying healthy is a skill set. It really is.
That's fair, because I think he is not ready to be transitioning away from his running game being a huge part of that offense. That's what made that offense, and I think they still need to run him a lot. It's maybe year 4 or 5, whatever, you start backing off a little. We're not there yet.
That's the one thing with A.J. Brown is like you love the idea of them adding him, but that wouldn't have necessarily made the team what they were last year. Like, they were an atypical type of offense. But Gregg, one thing, you've been on the Eagles thing, and you're projecting them to win 10 games. They won 9 a year ago, so you got to go a little stronger if you want to be this Eagles proponent.
I will when it comes to it.
Okay.
But I'm just saying the over-under was 8.5, so yeah, clearing that.
All right.
I think they have a chance to be really, really good. Like 12, 13, that type of team.
All right. Let's see. Let's do a quick one.
Okay.
Gregg's got this meeting coming up, so
Yeah.
We've got plenty of time. I'm not worried about
I'm
it.
concerned about your schedule.
How much time do we have?
We have
32
20
minutes.
Oh, we're good. We'll be done.
Well,
way
32
before
if
that.
they were coming to you. I guess you'd have to travel in the building somewhere. So
No, it's just a phone call. It's just a phone call.
32 minutes.
All right, here it is. This is the general kind of consensus statement / bit from the football Cognoscenti. Tom Brady will take the top analyst job in the NFL on Fox booth upon his retirement. So I guess that'll be about 2060.
Oh, God. Aw, Wes loved that sound.
2045.
This is Tom Brady's last year. And if you can't see that, you're not paying attention. This is not all your bits about he'll be playing forever. No, like, he tried to retire this year. He couldn't bring himself to it. He didn't have things quite set up how he wanted to in terms of post-NFL, something to take up his time, something to focus on. This huge deal, and we'll talk about it with Andrew Michon. I know you guys talked about it last week, where he gets paid bonkers money to be the #1 booth guy for Fox, who has 2 Super Bowls in the next 3 years. all this stuff ties in. Like, they want him in the booth for the Super Bowl in at least one of those years, and maybe both. And that's why you kind of can connect the dots here. This is Tom Brady's final season in the NFL, and I've been wrong about a lot of things at the end of Tom Brady's career, but this one I will pound the table on. The football Cognoscenti can take all their bits and stick them where the sun don't shine because you're not paying attention.
I will say, at least, I hope this makes you happy. When we talked about this Tom Brady news, there were none of those 2062 jokes that I can recall.
That's true. It was a lot of Twitter bits, and I 100% agree with you, Dan. And that news that popped up today, Tuesday, as we're taping, that there's a roast planned on Netflix for Tom Brady next year. Like it's all setting up. He's setting all these things up. I totally agree that this is gonna be it, and it adds a fun element to this Bucs season because it's a good-looking Bucs team. They got a chance to do it again.
I hope he stays healthy. All right, one more. Go ahead, Marc.
This one annoys me because this has been happening for months. I understand that all 4 teams in the AFC West are juicy, that they if they were all in different divisions, they might each win those divisions. But when I'm hearing, this could be the division that offers up 4 playoff teams or at least 3. First of all, they play each other. We all know that. That's going to be a problem because when you have the inflated record, it's because you're the Packers playing the Vikings, the Bears, and the Lions. In this division, these types of teams eat
these
each
teams
other
are
up.
going to beat each other up all
They
year
are,
long.
though. They are. But secondly,
that's true.
they also play
That I did use on the schedule.
They play the NFC West on top of it. Now, I know the NFC West with, Seattle situation, Arizona up and down, but
But they were that
still,
division a year ago, and they did get 3 playoff teams.
Exactly. Well, I just think that the AFC West, I wouldn't be shocked if in the end they're all kind of same type records, and you get 1 playoff team. I know maybe
one. Now that's ballsy.
Save that for the
Sandwich props.
it could be 1 because I'm not saying that they might be better than the records. 3 of the 4 teams might be better than the records.
So just pump the brakes on the blind optimism that there's 4 superpowers in that division. I think that's fair.
Bingo.
I think that's fair. The Raiders look better on paper, but you're right. One of those teams will probably take a face plant and be totally disappointing. It's a little hard to predict because they all look pretty good on paper.
No, never the Chargers. That's a whole other football
that would be
Cognoscenti
depressing.
thing.
That would be depressing.
The Chargers. This is the year that nothing could potentially go wrong for the Chargers.
How dare you?
Every year since 2008.
I don't think so. I mean, but listen. So you're right. Somebody will definitely dirt nap it. Who's the most likely team?
It's probably the Raiders.
Or one of the teams loses their quarterback, and then it's there's some unknown
If
disaster.
some of your
To me, it's the Raiders because the quarterback is. I like Derek Carr, but I trust the other 3 better.
New coach. We don't know if Josh
Denver?
McDaniels can be a
I was
head
going
coach.
to say your Russell Wilson slander can extend to this conversation, Greg, if you want. The window's
I'm
open.
trying not to give out too many takes.
All right,
that I'm
good.
going to back off on.
Good. All right, last one.
But that
Greg.
one does make sense to me. My last one.
Resident flautist.
I struggled with this one because it's like
Brother of Dean.
I was trying to figure out what is the consensus right now. I don't know, but you know what is the consensus? When you put some cold, hard numbers to things, and that's fantasy football. So I'm putting on my fantasy football hat and looking at all these guys who are doing the best ball leagues in the offseason. They're already picking leagues right now with big money at stake, and I'm looking at where players are getting drafted, and to me that's as consensus as it gets. I don't know if it's the Cognoscenti, but it's the fantasy heads out there, and I got a lot of takes, but I'm going to start and I'll go through them quick. Derrick Henry is the second pick in the draft. What?
That's crazy.
Derrick Henry's the second. What? What is happening here? They don't
Greg,
have
another segment idea. Just Greg's what?
Yeah.
All right, go ahead.
I mean, they don't have any offensive linemen. We know about his usage over the years. He's turning 27. Scott Pianowski had this great thread of running backs who do well in fantasy when they turn 27. It goes bad pretty often. I'm not saying he's gone, but
that doesn't say much about that community.
No, he should be gone from the top 10. I agree with that.
Okay, and then there were some other ones, like Devontae Adams still has a first-round
Our
pick.
producer's raising his hand. Should we call on him?
Sure.
All
I
right,
mean,
go ahead,
I don't want
Titans
this to
corner.
become into
Nice speed round.
Every episode I say something negative about the Titans, and then Graver sends it out to all his Titans. He's like, hey, check this out. Gregg Rosenthal of the Around the NFL podcast is
I support that.
Free
I support
clout.
I
that.
just swore so you couldn't
Free
use
clout.
it.
Yeah, I need to note that. Marcus Mosher, who I respect on Twitter, tweeted 4 hours ago there's no reason Henry should fall further than number 3 in your fantasy leagues this year.
So there we go.
Well, that's
Henry was on pace
Cognoscenti
for 2,300 yards and 20 touchdowns last season.
Yeah.
Don't tell me about pace when you broke your foot.
That is true. That's the big concern. Will he wear down? But over his last 30
and the line
games,
stinks, and they're not going to be leading games as much potentially.
maybe not. Maybe not.
Plus, Malik Willis is going to be running the football a lot, you would think. So.
That's
Not
true.
in
2022.
Other guys that really stood out to me on this realm of being a little overvalued. Devontae Adams, like, why would his numbers go up in Las Vegas with Derek Carr throwing to him and way more competition? And now he's like a top 10 pick. Clyde Edwards-Helaire, we're still doing this with Clyde Edwards-Helaire.
No,
he's getting drafted super high. And then
Who's drafting Clyde Edwards-Helaire after those 2 years?
Because fantasy guys draft on opportunity, even in May, and they see the opportunity. But it's like someone else will come on that team and take those carries, or someone already on the team will take those carries because he's not that great. But I didn't want to be all negative. So 2 guys that really intrigued me that were way too low was Jalen Waddle. Still has like a late 4th-round pick. Oh, man, he's going to load up. Tyreek Hill's not going to hurt him. He'll help him. And Hunter Renfrow. Similarly, I think people are digging Hunter Renfrow.
There you go, Gregg.
Way to the middle of the 7th round when it's like, no, he's not going anywhere. That's the guy that knows Derek Carr the best, and he's going to have more one-on-ones. He's not going anywhere.
It takes a big flautist to come all the way around on Hunter Renfrow, and now you're booking him for 100 and 1,100.
That was one of the worst takes I've ever had is dumping on Hunter Renfrow.
You did it because
I was
hairline.
wrong.
It was aesthetic because you're an
diminutive
artist.
white man with receding hairline at 21, and you held it against
him. And like Carr and him have this thing, and early on he was forcing it, throwing him 13 balls for like 3 for 33, and I was like, this is the worst play in football. But Carr knew what he was doing. Carr knew what he was doing.
All right,
that's it.
Good stuff. Dean Stewart, Rosenthal.
It's got to go with Dean Stewart at this point. He could still make.
He
that
was
switch.
on a podcast recently. I should send the link out.
What was that?
Dean
what
Stewart
was
was
talking about experimental classical music. So all our listeners should.
Does he have? Does he sound like you? Does it have that Rosenthal?
No, he doesn't.
I gotta hear this.
I think you've met him, Dan.
Dean?
Yeah.
I don't know if I ever have.
I don't think
Maybe
Dan ever
once.
did.
I have multiple times.
You have
Multiple
Marc.
times.
Yeah, well, at the Super Bowl, at a pizza gathering in Los Angeles for Ricky Hollywood.
They hit it off. You know how Marc just like, there's just some people that are Marc people.
Yeah.
Like Connor or who we had last.
Sure.
There's a lot of Marc people. But there was some sort of, like Marc definitely likes Dean more than me. I can tell. I mean,
that is a projection. I don't like. I found Dean to be enjoyable to talk to.
In a quick conversation, they had a connection. Dean's always asking, "Oh, what's up with that Marc guy? I really like that guy."
He also Marc didn't deny it. He said it was a projection, but yeah.
It's fine.
I just don't want Gregg walking around thinking that. I could like them equally, like they were my children. Gregg and Dean Stewart.
It's like whenever we have a guest on the show, and then after about 12 minutes of conversation, Marc's like, "Who do you like the best of us?" It's like, "Oh, not again."
Who do you think's the best athlete of us?
I'm gonna hold you to it. I'm gonna hold it. Who do you like better, Dean or Gregg?
I like them equally.
Who would you rather
but
do
he's
a podcast?
only talked to Dean
I would
for
rather
like 30 minutes.
I would rather do one with Gregg because I know it's going to be a hit.
I spent, we were in each other's presence for probably 7-8 hours this weekend. You've talked to Dean maybe for 20 minutes in your life. He's already tied. Me.
We talked a ton, Gregg. It was a group conversation. Gregg told some fantastic stories about. Well, I'm not going to get into it, but
those are some good answers, some good non-answers to the mainstream media you did there. I like
that's right.
All right, we'll be back Thursday. Marc is heading on vacation. Enjoy yourself.
Thank you.
What are you doing?
Will not be telling you.
Thought you weren't going to ask.
Couldn't help myself. Till Thursday, heed the call.